But let's get back to the other big story of last week, and what a week I decided to be sick. A massive outage over, was it Friday that it went? Was Friday it went down? A tech outage or a global tech outage caused by a cybersecurity software company called CrowdStrike, which crashed Microsoft Windows systems around the globe on Friday as they were doing an update or something. I don't really understand what happened. I understood I was sick at home in bed. I wasn't trying to buy anything online. We had a look at the platform's operating systems and everything. We seemed to have got away scot-free. The app kept working. Amazing. But what did happen? And could it happen again? And was it nearly the end of the world or not? I thought to find out more, we'd need to ask someone with some expertise in such things. So Paul Spain from Gorilla Technology Limited, their CEO, joins us on the line now. Paul, lovely to have you on the platform again. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Sean.
All right, look, first, in terms of stuff going wrong with global business technology, how big a deal was Friday?
Well, this one was a really big deal because of the particular systems that it hit and how far-reaching it was. But because it hit systems that kept things like airports and airlines online, banks online, and so on, because they went down, those things went offline, and so we all noticed. If it had just hit Microsoft suggests maybe 8.5 million, computers around the world. If it had just hit computers that were, say, individual people's laptops, that wouldn't have been so painful. But when it stops commerce and it stops flights and the like, even emergency calls, we understand in some regions, that becomes pretty painful.
All right. Now, Paul, I could sit here and conduct this interview, nod and and ah sagely and pretend I have some idea what you're doing about. What I'm going to ask you to do in response to the next series of questions I ask you is imagine you're talking to a child. Okay?
Fair enough.
Who really doesn't understand most of this stuff, but kind of knows it's important for the grown-ups. But I do want to understand what went on. So if we could talk on that level, it would make it easier for me. And though they might not admit it, I suspect most of my audience as well, Paul. So let's start with this company. What was it called? It was called
CrowdStrike.
CrowdStrike. What does CrowdStrike do?
So they have software that's used by a lot of big organisations, such as banks here in New Zealand, to help protect those organisations against cyber attacks. And so they have the software that sits on a lot of Windows computers and other computers around the world, and it's sitting there looking for something dodgy happening, some problem that points to maybe a cyber attack.
Someone trying to steal your data or your money or mess with your world.
Exactly.
Right.
And so that software, that's what it does. And what happened in this case is, now look, we're all used to software updates that maybe come through on our iPhones,
it drives you crazy.
Androids, our laptops,
stop
right?
all this updates and this updates and put in your bloody password you've forgotten, right? Okay. So they had an update, which I imagine for software like that, you have to constantly keep updating to keep it operable.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And because they're trying to keep systems protected against the latest risks, they're actually updating their software on a constant basis, multiple times a day, quietly in the background. Usually, you don't think about it. You're not impacted. It's no issue at all.
Yeah.
One of the challenges with software updates is if they go wrong, then things break. So most software companies, the Microsofts and Apples and so on, they will put that software through a very rigorous
testing
process. And it doesn't always go right, but usually if somebody's impacted, it's at the smaller end of the scale rather than the larger end of the scale. But because the software is there to protect you against the latest attacks, they're trying to get it out as swiftly as possible, and they really didn't get that balance right. They didn't do enough testing, and so when their quiet little update happened in the background, suddenly systems started falling over.
So their update impacted. It did the very sort of thing that their software was meant to stop happening.
Ironically so.
Okay. So their update affected other computer programs involved in things like, I don't know, airline scheduling, e-commerce, banking and stuff like that.
Yeah, so what happened was those computers effectively just ground to a halt, and they needed somebody to work on them. So we saw photos and footage of IT engineers there in check-in halls and all these other locations around the world, as they had to get in front of a lot of these systems in person and walk through steps to remediate these computers and get them back online.
So it wasn't the old turn it off, turn it on again?
Unfortunately not. That would have been much easier.
Oh, okay. So who's liable for all the loss and damage caused?
Yeah, that's a challenging one, and usually a software company will have they will limit themselves in their terms and conditions of business and so on from a liability perspective. But maybe we will see a lawsuit ahead in the coming days and weeks. But at this point in time, it's all sorts of companies that are carrying the load. We've heard of Kiwis stuck in airports in the US who are going to be claiming on their travel insurance. There are businesses that would have lost a whole chunk of orders, or maybe not been able to trade at all for a period of time. Very hard to get that money back.
Paul, what happens to the company itself? CrowdStrike, surely this would be terminal.
Well, it's interesting. Their share price is down about 10% from what it was before the incident, but it's only down to what their share price was last month. So it's a very, very curious thing. It doesn't look as though it's been as bad on them as one might expect.
Mm. Look, the other thing is someone's just sent me a text here, Paul, and if you could respond to this. Sean, would there be any chance that I may have been involved with the cyber attack? It's wrong to call it a cyber attack, isn't it? This is absolute cock-up rather than conspiracy.
Yes.